Diplomatic efforts to bring a permanent end to the US-Iran war are rapidly underway, even as tensions escalate over the Strait of Hormuz. The US naval blockade of the strait has so far stopped 13 vessels sailing to or from Iranian ports in its bid to weaken Iran's economy. In return, Iran has threatened to block shipping passing through the Red Sea and to strike at US ships. Yet despite the escalation, Pakistan has said that both parties are willing to hold talks again soon, although no date has so far been set. Pakistani Field Marshal General Asim Munir continues to relay messages between Washington and Tehran, for whom the major points of contention are control over Hormuz and the future of Iran's nuclear program. Iran sees both points of leverage as vital deterrents against a future US-Israeli attack. In the meantime, efforts are ongoing to force Israel to halt its attacks on Lebanon, where it has continued to conduct strikes despite Pakistan insisting that the country was included in the initial ceasefire agreement. Israeli and Lebanese ambassadors to Washington met on Tuesday, and US President Trump has said officials from the two countries will speak again on Thursday. Yet while Israel's government continues to demand that Lebanon's government disarm Hezbollah, Lebanese officials insist that their priority is reaching a ceasefire. Israel's attacks have so far killed over 2,000 Lebanese residents since Hezbollah started firing on Lebanon in the beginning of March, and it has forced over 1 million to evacuate, a devastating impact on a country barely recovering from its last war with Israel in late 2024. So, as tensions escalate around the Strait of Hormuz and the future of the ceasefire remains unclear, how are countries in the region, particularly the Gulf states who have been on the front line of this conflict, looking at what comes next? Can they trust that any deal over Hormuz will take their needs into account? And if not, what can they do about it? Today, I'm speaking to one such voice from the region, a professor at Kuwait University and founder of al-Saif Consulting, Dr. Badr al-Saif. So, I want to begin by just getting your brief reaction to news of these ceasefire talks between Washington and Tehran. Do you worry that as major stakeholders in this conflict, the Gulf countries may not have their security needs addressed during these talks?
For these talks to succeed, Tamara, we need to be front and center in these negotiations. As you clearly and rightly laid out, we've been at the front lines of this conflict, and we share this neighborhood with Iran. And therefore, any kind of discussion that takes place needs to not only look at the very focused issues of the nuclear or even Hormuz, but it should look at all the issues of concern to the Gulf. The positioning, the way that the Iranian regime state has been operating in the past few decades has been concerning to us. The meddling in internal affairs is nothing new. We've discovered, or uncovered rather, 4 sleeper cells in Kuwait alone in the last few weeks. And there are other ones as well in Bahrain and the UAE. And this is just a small drop in a bucket of a long list of issues that we need to sort out with our neighbor. We wish Iran only good, and we hope that this same wish is reciprocated to us. There hasn't been any demonstrable proof of us interfering in Iranian affairs. And so this should be the main issue driving the negotiations, because this is the bigger framework. Based on that framework, then you can spin off to other issues concerning the nuclear, the parameter of the missiles program, and unfortunately, what was a non-issue, and because of this war became an issue, which is the Strait of Hormuz and the blockage of the Strait of Hormuz. This is a very worrying action, and it shouldn't be a precedent for more to come in the near future.
But do you not worry that given these newfound sources of leverage, the Strait of Hormuz, as you mentioned, which was not an issue before the war, given the nuclear issue, which has been the main justification for going to war, do you not fear that issues which are perhaps more immediate to the Gulf states, like Iran's missiles, which have caused such damage over the past weeks, like, as you mentioned, their allied groups in the region, sleeper cells and so forth, do you not worry that those might drop lower down the table of priorities, especially for a US president that is arguably seeking a quick win that matters more to his domestic constituency and to US immediate needs rather than factors within the region?
A quick win is not in the interest of any party. I think a more long-term permanent solution will serve not only the regional actors, but it will also serve the United States better. And that has been expressed in the past. The worry is what kind of patience and bandwidth do you have and expertise on the table to deliver the intended results? Because look, Tamara, the devil is in the details. There's so much that needs to be uncovered, discussed, negotiated. There should be confidence building measures all over again. We have shattered our red lines and our rules of engagement in the past few years, let alone in the last 6 weeks. All of this needs to be rebuilt, and it needs to be rebuilt collectively. Because only in a collective security manner will we be able to arrive at a more lasting solution.
I'm very interested in your emphasis on the collective. You've repeated a lot of times that there is a need for greater unity among the GCC states to really tackle these security problems head on. I wonder, though, do all Gulf states see these security threats similarly? Obviously, in the heat of war, many things are said, and we've seen a variety of opinions. But I wonder, do you not feel that maybe the more hawkish line taken by some Gulf states, for example, the United Arab Emirates and Bahrain, may be incompatible with perhaps the more conciliatory tone of countries like your own Kuwait, but also Qatar and Oman? Do you think that might make it difficult to formulate a collective response to these security issues?
Unity is a sought after target wherever you go. And differences of opinion will always exist in any conglomerate that you can think of. Look at the EU, look at NATO, look at ASEAN, even look at BRICS. And the same thing goes for the Gulf Cooperation Council. We have different display of opinions, and I think this is healthy. They need to be aired out. The good news is we all agree on the end result of having stable, secure countries in a prosperous region that focuses on the positive. Where the differences lie are how to get to that goal. And obviously, in a very fluid situation that we're in with different actors playing in different roles, comes different opinions. As you mentioned, there could be the more hawkish endeavor or demeanor, and then there is the more mediated one. I think the best approach is to pick and put together and tie the different strands of these ideas so that they can become your collective response to threats. We cannot let go of a right to defend ourselves, which in some circles is considered hawkish, but going more active is something that we truly reserve, and it's part of our own rights as independent states. And so is open diplomacy. Look, even the ones that you've mentioned as the most hawkish, you've mentioned the UAE and Bahrain, and you can skin the cat in different ways when it comes to the six Gulf states, by the way. It depends on how we're analyzing them. But look, I'll take you to yesterday's call between the UAE vice president and the head of parliament in Iran, Khalipov. They spoke, even though the UAE was the hardest hit in the last 6 weeks. That tells you sanity needs to prevail. And in the world of politics, all options are possible. But I think we have to move forward. We can't be hung up with what happened. Yes, we've been attacked, and there has been a lot of damages, and those need to be also looked into. But we need to also look at how we can develop a mechanism that works for us together on both shores of the Gulf.
You place a lot of faith in that pragmatism, as has been mentioned, by proof of sheer geography. The Gulf states are in the region, Iran is in the region. A modus vivendi will need to be established. How do you see the Gulf states taking those steps to, as you put it, maybe lessen their reliance on just the US or just one actor, and at the same time try to engage but maintain protected from an Iran that, has become more desperate and more unpredictable with its actions? How do you see the Gulf states kind of towing that line and managing to maintain that balance?
Look, the good news, Tamara, is that this has been long in the making. I mean, there hasn't been any sheer surprise, oddly enough, of all the different actors in the region. Israel has been absent from our discussion, but I'd like to bring it in because it has been playing a spoiler role for the longest time. And this is not,
Please do.
and this has been demonstrated over and over again. And as we speak right now, they're still hitting on various places in Lebanon, and this is something that's not acceptable. You can't bulldoze your way into normalcy and integration in the region. This is not the right approach. And the US needs to listen hard to its partners in the region because supporting Israel in that approach is also not helpful to the US. And in terms of the US itself, we've seen their disengagement in previous years across various administrations. So to think that this is something new is to not look at that history very carefully. So I think diversifying our partnerships is key. This has been ongoing. It's not new. And look, Tamara, the biggest thing is self-reliance. That's the golden rule. And that's what we need to focus on front and center. And it will take time to get there. We have been more successful in certain files over others, but I think the better coordination that we have within the region, the better clear-eyed targets that we have towards reaching that self-sufficiency, the better equipped we are in handling one another. Because unfortunately, there is that misguided perception that we are not deserving of being independent states, that we're quasi-states in the Gulf, that we don't operate as independent states. And for those that think along those lines, I beg to differ, and that's being very diplomatic. We've shown our thick skin through and throughout. We've been the ones who have fought defensively across the war. And that's where you come in and you review all your partnerships, the good and bad, the ones that you thought would stand by you, the ones that neglected you, the ones that have surprised you by coming in for and with strong support. Those need to come in together. We need to have that internal conversation in the Gulf, and it needs to be reflected into your policy. By the way, not only in defense and security, I think it should be multi-pronged and it should touch on all files. Gone are the days of siloing our files in the Gulf. We need to integrate all these files together to get maximum returns and yield.
You mentioned previously in one interview that this tense balance of power between Israel and Iran kind of gives us a chance to get to a place where we, the Gulf states, can vie for a leadership role. I wonder, though, do you think there is adequate room there, or do you think there will be a pressure to bandwagon and to take sides? Because we've seen just on the part of Israel kind of a hope or an expectation that Gulf states would more actively join this war, some kind of suspicious leaks in Israeli media. We've seen, even beyond its hostility with Iran, we've seen tense words exchanged with Turkey. I wonder, with the footing that Israel is on, which seems quite opportunistic post-October 7th to kind of reshape the region, does that really allow for the shared stability and unity that you yourself were speaking of?
The Israeli right and the current coalition government has been trying very hard to put words in the mouth and policies and actions of the Gulf states. And not only in the region, even in circles in Washington, D.C. So that needs to be countered with clarity. We need to show them what we look for and how we approach ourselves and see others, our worldview rather. And let me give you a small example. When people were thinking that we were, or the Saudis rather, would go for the Abraham Accords back in 2023, even before October 7, they went to the other side and they delivered a détente with Iran. So we need to listen to really what's happening in the Gulf from the Gulf to begin with. And in terms of the Middle East, if you look at our most recent and even further out history, it has always been managed by a delicate balance of power between different parties. For one party to claim the unrivaled dominance in the region is not something that has happened before, nor does it bode well when it comes to them trying to push their way through. So that kind of discourse and action in the last few years from Israel is truly disturbing. And it's not only disturbing to their immediate neighbors, but to the larger neighborhood and frankly to the globe, because you're setting precedents for things that shouldn't be done when it comes to this indiscriminate killing, maiming of kids, the largest orphanage in history in Gaza, the genocidal behaviors that we've seen, on and on. That shouldn't be normalized. And it's saddening to me as human beings that we, in the world of social media, you just flip through and you move on to the next story. It's not normal. And that shouldn't be guiding the behavior of the supposed undisputed power in the region. And that's why, for us to have a delicate balance of power where there are, the demonstrable powers of non-Arab states like Israel, Turkey, and Iran, and they've been flexing their muscles, I call for an Arab voice. I call for the Gulf to be part of that picture because we have more to deliver than what we've been delivering. And it's not to look insular and within to deliver our national visions, which we've been working very hard on, But I think we can also add to the debate on the region, add to how we see one another. What kind of international relations can we aspire to that's organically built and that delivers from our own traditions and histories? We're not going to divorce the rest of the world, but we want to bring it into communication with our world. That's what we need to do. That hasn't been done, Tamara. And I have faith in that delivering something different, not only for the region, but also delivering a model for other parts in the world to look at. And look at us in the last 6 weeks. We've held the responsible line among a sea of irresponsible actors like Israel, like Iran, like the US. We've stuck to the rules-based international order, whatever that's left of them, because that's what we have. Those are the rules that liberated my country, Kuwait, in 90 and 91. And that's what held us together in the last 6 weeks. And that's what we aspire to coming forward. So again, we need to have cool-headed minds come together and think about this not only in the short term, but in the medium and the long term as well.
Dr. al-Saif, I know you have to go, but thank you so much for speaking to Middle East Eye today. It was really a pleasure to hear your analysis and your perspective, and hopefully we'll have you back again soon.